Hello, we're going to go through the Quiz 7 review together. Please make sure for the quiz I'm going to give you the formulas. You just need to know how to use them, so I won't tell you what the variables represent or anything like that. So for the first one, it says determine whether the function is an example of exponential growth or decay, then find the y-intercept. So the formula that we're going to use is y equals a times b to the x power. Please make sure that you have down that this a represents the y-intercept, and the b determines whether it is growth or decay. And how we can tell the difference: if that b is a number greater than 1, it is growth. If that b is a number between 0 and 1, it is decay. So for number 1, notice this would be our a and this would be our b. So we would say our y-intercept is going to be 0.2. And then that b is 9, so it is a number greater than 1, so we would say it is exponential growth. Now if you get those two mixed up or you freeze in terms of the quiz, what I would recommend, just go ahead and graph it. So go to the y equals, and then we're going to type this equation in exactly how it is, and then click graph. And notice it's increasing, so it's exponential growth. If it was decreasing, it would be decay. And then we want to see where it crosses this y-axis. So to determine that, just go to second trace and go to value, so number 1, click enter. And we want to know when x equals 0, what does y equal? And notice how when x equals 0, y equals 0.2, so that would be our y-intercept. Again, that was under second trace. Go to number 1, and then just always type in x equals 0 and see what the y value is. So for this next one, we have y equals 7 to the x power. Notice the number attached to the x, that's always going to be your b. So if we want to have two numbers, we can squeeze in a 1 there. So our a would be 1, our b would be 7. So our y-intercept for this one is going to be 1, and the 7 is a number greater than 1, so it is growth also for this one. So that would be our final answer. For number 3, it's a simple interest equation, so we're going to use the equation y equals our a times 1 plus our r to the t power. Remember, our a stands for initial amount, our r stands for rate, and our t stands for time. So for this one, it says the population of Sharpsburg is 200 people. The population is supposed to grow by 2.55% each year for the next 3 years. How many people will live in Sharpsburg in 3 years? So for here, our initial amount was 200, and then it's going to increase, so we're going to add the rate. If we were to decrease, we're going to subtract the rate. Make sure that rate, we're going to move that decimal over 2 places to the left. So we're going to plug in 0.0255, and our time needs to be in terms of years, so 3 years. So then we're going to plug that into our calculator just like that. And notice it's people, so 0.5 or higher, we want to round down, or round up, sorry, and then at 0.4 or below, we're going to round down. So for this one, we're going to have 216 people. The next one says write the parent function, list the transformations. So the equation we want to use on this one is y equals our a times b to the x minus h power plus k. Notice this a out in front is in charge of stretching, compressing, or reflecting it across the x-axis. This h is in charge of moving it left and right, and this k is in charge of moving it up and down. So for this one, the number b, or what number is in the b's place, to the x power is always your parent function. So for the first one, our parent function would be y equals 6 to the x power. Anything that's multiplied or added or subtracted to that then is the transformations that we need to list. So this one has a negative out in front, so we would say it's reflected across the x-axis. Then that 2/7 is a number between 0 and 1, so we would say it's compressed by a factor of 2/7. And then this minus 2 in the exponent spot means it goes to the right 2. And then this plus 3 means it goes up 3 units. So that would be our final answer. For number 5, again, this number to the x power is going to be our parent function. So we'd have y equals 1/3 to the x power. You can put it in parentheses or it doesn't need to be. And then this 8 multiplied in the a spot is going to stretch it by a factor of 8. And then this minus 9, notice it's not in the exponent spot, so it is in charge of moving it up and down. It is negative, so it moves it down 9 units. For the next two problems, they just want to make sure that we know where the E button is on our calculator. So we're just typing these into our calculator. So the E button, or refresher, notice it's kind of right next to the 4 button. It's right above it. And so we need to click second and then that LN button. And then we want to do E to the 9th power. And for this one, it says round to 2 decimal places. So we're going to have 8,103.08. The next one, we want E to the -2 power. So we're going to type that in. Round to 2 decimal places, so we get 0.14. Now for this next one, it's compounded interest. So we're going to use a different equation. So it's y equals p times e to the RT power. Make sure the r and the t both need to be in the exponent spot. So for this one, our principal is 500, so we're going to plug that in for our p. We're going to use the E button on our calculator. Our rate is 1.2, so we're going to move that decimal back 2 places. So we're going to put 0, 1, 2 times, and then 12 years. Plug in 12 there. So we'll type this into our calculator. And for this one, it is money for our label, so we're going to round to the hundreds place. Alrighty, for this next one, it says write the equation in logarithm form. So right now it is in exponential form, so we want to write it to logarithm form. So we're going to have log of, and this is our base, so log of base 2 of 512 equals, then our exponent is always going to be on the opposite side. So that is our final answer. Now if we wanted to, off to the side, just go and check our work, I would type this into my calculator, log of 512 divided by log of 2, and check to see when we type this in if it actually equals 9. If not, we need to rearrange the numbers. So our log button is right next to the 7, so we click log of 512 divided by log of 2. We click enter. Notice how it equals 9, so we know we have the correct order. Only one combination or order will work, so if we don't get the right number, then we know we need to rearrange them. Now on the back side, we're going to take a look at number 10. It says evaluate each logarithm. There's 2 different ways we can work this out, one using the calculator and one method by hand, so we're going to take a look at both methods. So first off, if we're going to do this by hand, we're going to set it equal to some variable. It doesn't matter which variable we're going to set it equal to. So we would have to switch it first to exponential form. So 2 to the x power equals 128. Notice 2, we can't do a factor tree for 2, but 128, we're going to do the factor tree for 128. So we get 2 and 64, 8 and 8, 2 and 4, 2 and 2, 4 and 2, 2 and 2. So we get 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 2s. So we're going to rewrite this as 2 to the 7th power. Notice how our bases are the same. So if our bases are the same and both sides are equal to one another, then our exponents also have to be equal to one another. So we're just going to set our exponents equal to one another. So x has to equal 7. So that is the by hand method. The calculator method, we're just going to type it into our calculator. So go to log of 128 divided by log of 2. And if we type this into our calculator, we should get the same answer. So log of 128 divided by log of 2. And we get 7. Make sure if you're typing it into your calculator, it's not always the smaller number, the bigger number that goes in the numerator and the denominator. It's the number that's lowered, notice, goes down in the denominator. So for this next one, again, we're going to solve it both ways. So we'll set it equal to a variable, it doesn't matter which variable you use. So switch it to exponential form. So we have 4 to the x power equals 32. And then we're going to break it down and do our factor tree. So 4 is 2 times 2, or 2 to the second power. 32 is, if we go off to the side, 2 and 16, 4 and 4, 2 and 2. So we have a total of 5 2s, so 2 to the 5th power. Notice over here on the left, a power to a power, we multiply. So the bases are the same, so set our exponents equal to one another. We multiply these exponents, so we get 2x equals 5. We go ahead and solve for our x. So we get x equals 5 halves. Okay, and then if we're going to do this by the calculator method, we would have log of 32 divided by log of 4. And if we enter this into our calculator, we should get the same answer. The only difference is the calculator is going to give it to you as a decimal instead of a fraction. So you can either write this fraction or this decimal 2.5, or you can go to math. FRAC stands for fraction. Click enter, enter, and it'll switch it to a fraction for you. And you can see we get the same exact answer. So either answer, decimal or fraction, would be acceptable. Now the last two problems want you to go ahead and graph them, and you can just make a sketch, is perfectly fine. So if we go to the y equals, how we're going to type this into our calculator, we're going to go log of x divided by log of 3. Notice the 3 is lowered, so it is what goes in the denominator. And then if we click graph, notice how it increases like that. So then we can just make that curve upwards. Okay. The next one, we're going to type into our calculator. Notice for this one, it is in that form of y equals a times b to the x power. So our a represents our y-intercept, so notice how it crosses at 8, and our b is a number greater than 1, so it should be an exponential growth. So our graph does match. So we want to make sure that when we graph it, that it's crossing up here at 8. And then it is increasing from there. Please let me know if you have further questions. Hopefully this video helps.